Hi, I'm Arlen Geyer. Today I want to talk about Lightroom presets. A preset is what we used to call a macro, where Lightroom records a series of settings that you want to use repeatedly. So, for example, in the slideshow module, let me go back and select a few images here. And in the slideshow module, presets are really useful. You can specify the background color you want. I've got my identity plate up here, and I've specified a particular size and recorded that here, and I've got several of them here, and those are all presets. So each time I want to make a slideshow, I can simply click on one of these presets or user templates, and all the settings that I have defined will come up. The same thing is true with printing, and in fact, printing is the most useful, in my opinion, of the various presets in Lightroom. The preset will specify the printer, it'll specify the size of paper, and even the type of paper, the size you want to print, and if you want a copyright notice or some other text on here, that is all saved in the preset. And so every time you want to print, you can simply click that, and it will print as you have specified. But what about develop module presets? What are they for? They'd be useful for any time you want to make the same adjustments to a bunch of images. So if I wanted to, let me go back and look. So if I had a lot of images that were shot in similar conditions, like for example, a basketball game, and they all needed the same kind of correction, I could do that with a preset. Another situation would be, for example, maybe if you're shooting in the theater. And again, you have all of them in a similar situation, and so they all would require the same kind of adjustment. But of course, in the theater, the lighting changes frequently, and people moving forward and back on the stage will change how much light is on them. And so the conditions are not always so stable. And what about, let's just go in here to look at for example, here are some concert photographs, and they were all done in similar lighting conditions. This is a folk concert, so it didn't have the rock and roll type lighting changes. It was basically just the lighting was set and left. So the lighting is constant from one end to the other. Now, a few of these I've already made adjustments on. So for example, I've made an adjustment on this one, but not these. The lighting was originally pretty much the same on all of these. This one's been brightened up. The exposure was obviously not quite sufficient on these. So I could use a preset to set all of these to the same thing. But that situation is probably going to be unique to that particular concert series, and not necessarily something that's going to happen in another concert shoot. So I could come into this one in the develop module and create a preset for the adjustments I've made in here under presets. Click the plus sign and select the options that I want. I just might want to check all in this situation, but I'm going to cancel that at the moment, and I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to go back here, and let's say I have made this adjustment on the first one here, and I want all of these up to here to have that same adjustment. Rather than going to the trouble of creating a preset, at this point, I can do something much faster. I can, with the one that's already adjusted, already selected, I can now select all the other ones I want, and I just did a shift click on the last one that I want here. And now in the library module, I can simply go to sync settings in the lower right corner. And in this case, I want to adjust everything. So I'm going to check all and click synchronize. And Lightroom will copy the settings that I did on that first one to all of those. So it is the same process as a preset, but without making a preset. So in making exposure adjustments for a particular situation, that's more efficient than making a preset, because it's not likely you're going to need that exact set of adjustments in another shoot. So where would you use a develop module preset? Again, it's where you would want to make the same adjustments over and over again, and not necessarily right now. Some years ago, I did a project of making intimate portraits, very close-ups of faces. And I wanted to print these in monochrome, but I didn't want them to be in black and white strictly. I wanted them to have a slightly warm tone. Not so much warm as you might call sepia, but just a little warmer than black and white. So let's take this one, for example. And so I might make a little adjustment on this, the exposure. I might bring up a little bit and just tone down the brightest highlights a little bit like that. But what I want here is black and white. Now, I could just desaturate it, but what I'm going to switch it to black and white, and I'm going to actually use split toning to achieve the color. And split toning is designed to produce a different hue in the highlights and the shadows. You need to increase the saturation to make it work. So I'll just to show you, just to really exaggerate, you can make the shadows one color and the highlights another color, like that kind of thing. We got red highlights and blue shadows, but that's not what I want. I want to have pretty much the same thing in both, and it's going to be very subtle. And because I can, I might actually make it so the highlights are a little bit stronger than the shadows. This balance is, this is 100% highlights, this is 100% shadows, and I'm going to make it so it's mostly shadows, but the highlights have a little bit more just because I can. And that's all I want. I just want a little bit of tone in there. Now notice that when I adjust this to black and white, it actually needs a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to kick up the contrast a little bit, because we don't have color contrast when it's in black and white. We only have value contrast. So that's what I want on that one. And now I'm going to make the preset. Actually, it's a little bit green, so let's back that off a little bit, like that. Okay, so now I'm going to make the preset, and I'm going to call this slightly warm tone. I'm going to put it in user presets. I can change where it goes. I can create a new folder. But here's the important thing is I made some adjustments on this that are unique to this image. The amount I brightened it is unique to this image. The amount of contrast I changed is unique to this image. So I'm going to uncheck all or check none. And the only things that I want to include are the treatment, black and white, and the split toning. Everything else is unique to this image. The ones that I want to record for future use are just the switching it to black and white and the specific split toning that I did. So I'm going to create that. And now, if I had another image, let's say this one, for example, and we go to the Develop module, and I can go to slightly warm tone, and that one has the same look now. So that way I can get a consistent look for all of the images that I'm going to have in that particular project. Another use I make for Develop module presets is noise reduction for different ISO levels, because when you shoot at very high ISO levels, you tend to get digital noise. And with a particular camera, you'll get the same quality of noise at a given ISO. Since that's predictable, I can make a preset that is going to do the adjustments that I want to make in sharpening and in noise reduction. I'll do some noise reduction and some sharpening in order to get a good look. And so I've experimented to find a good combination for each of my cameras and for the different high ISO levels that I've used. So that's another use for Develop module presets. But the important thing is where they are useful is where you're going to want to repeat the same settings over and over again in the future. And be sure that you name your preset something that you'll remember in a week or a year. All right, I hope that's been useful.